Tonight, hate crime investigation. Mounties look into offensive graffiti in Fort St. John. Icy plunge. The truck falls through the ice in the Pine River. And throne speech. The BC legislature resumes for the first time in 9 months. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. And we begin tonight with a hate crime investigation underway in Fort St. John. It comes after the Tribal 8 Treaty Association reporting hate symbols spray painted on the side of their building. Photos shared on social media show the graffiti left behind over the weekend. Swastikas that, as you can see, have been since covered up, were tagged on the side of the building on 100th Avenue. The symbol, long associated with anti-Semitism, has also become a symbol of hatred and racial bias. It was accompanied by a statement under an Every Child Matters sign, the sign displaying a tally of children who never made it home following the discovery of potential unmarked graves at Canadian residential schools. Mayor Lilia Hansen condemning what she's calling racist graffiti, saying there is no place for hate in Fort St. John. As for the RCMP, police say their investigation remains ongoing and are now looking to gather video surveillance. Mounties are asking anyone with any information to contact the Fort St. John RCMP. Well, 2 people were taken to hospital after a vehicle plunged into the Pine River near Taylor. North Peace Search and Rescue were called to the scene Friday night after a pickup fell through the ice into the river. Members of the Ice Rescue and Swiftwater Rescue teams managed to find the 2 people. They were brought to shore and transferred to an awaiting ambulance. So far, there's no word on their condition. Fort St. John RCMP say the truck has since been recovered from the river. Mounties say the driver is now the subject of an impaired driving investigation. And police in Fort Nelson are asking for the public's help in finding a missing person. Mounties are looking for Michael McCann. The 44-year-old is being described as a Caucasian male. He stands 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighs 161 pounds and has green eyes. The RCMP are providing no other information on McCann, including when he was last seen. CJDC-TV News reached out to the Northern Rockies RCMP to inquire why important information was left out of their press release. They didn't get back to us. Anyone with any information on McCann's whereabouts is being asked to contact Fort Nelson Police. It's back to work for BC MLAs. Affordability, public safety, and the economy all looming large as politicians return to the legislature in Victoria today. The legislature reconvening for the first time in 9 months. It also welcomed a new official opposition. Lieutenant Governor Wendy Kokia delivering her first speech from the throne. Kokia opening the first session of BC's 43rd Parliament by saying, "We are in the most consequential time since the Second World War." Fighting back against U.S. tariffs and protecting BC's economy was at the heart of the speech today. Kokia doubling down on the position that Canada will not be the 51st state, adding trust has been broken with Canada's biggest ally. She spelled out the NDP's plans to speed up approvals and support emerging industries. Kokia highlighting problems in the forest industry, and she reiterated the government's plan to expedite energy projects that will benefit rural and northern BC. The Lieutenant Governor also spoke on BC's troubled healthcare system. Part of the government's plan will be to expedite getting credentials for foreign-trained doctors. And finally, the NDP plans to add more police officers and take steps to stop the revolving door of justice. Well, the federal government has signed a historic agreement with the Haida First Nation. It'll recognize the Aboriginal title of Haida Gwaii off BC's northern coast.
It marks the beginning of a new chapter in the relationship between the Haida Nation and the Government of Canada. A new chapter that commits the government to partner as true equals with the Haida Nation. A new chapter that enshrines the right of the Haida to control their own destiny.
The agreement transitions Crown title land to the Haida people, and it grants them an inherent legal right to the land. The transfer of the underlying title will affect how courts interpret issues involving disputes. The agreement follows similar recognition by the BC government last year. Close to 1,200 LifeLab employees throughout the province, including here in Dawson Creek, will begin job action this week. The union representing the workers say they issued strike notice on Sunday. As an essential service, the union says employees will continue to work and do everything in their control to minimize service disruptions. The BC Government Employees Union says it comes after months of negotiation and LifeLab's refusal to bring wages and benefits in line with the cost of living. LifeLab employees have been without a contract since April of last year. The union says its members voted 98% in favor of strike action back in November. They will begin rotating temporary closures starting this Thursday. And BC health officials are warning travelers they may have been exposed to measles after an infected person returned to British Columbia from Southeast Asia. It happened last Tuesday, according to a joint statement from the Fraser and Coastal Health authorities. Anyone who was on board Air Canada Flight 66 from Bangkok to Vancouver that day may have been exposed to the virus. The warning also includes anyone who was in the international arrivals area of YVR between 7 and 9:30 a.m. that same day. It's the second confirmed case of measles in British Columbia since March of last year. Before that, there hadn't been any known cases since 2019. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says she still supports her health minister. That despite new calls from inside her own party for Adriana Lagrange to be removed from her post. A lawsuit was filed by the former CEO of Alberta Health Services. Athana Metsalopoulos claims the health minister was aware that pressure was being applied to award inflated and overpriced contracts. She claims those contracts were with private surgical providers at the taxpayer's expense. On her radio call-in show on Saturday, Smith said Lagrange will remain as health minister, but with a check on her power.
We have to make sure that Minister Lagrange is removed from making any decisions around this file. This is why it's got to be independent. It's got to be overseen by another body. We're identifying those individuals right now. I'll have more to say about that next week. But I think she's doing such amazing and important work on the refocus of the healthcare system. This is a very crucial period of time, these next 6 months, and I need her to continue at that.
On Friday, Danielle Smith's own infrastructure minister, Peter Guthrie, asked for Lagrange to be moved out of the health ministry while the allegations are investigated. Lagrange will be filing a statement of defense within the next 21 days. And a small town in Alberta is reeling after a 14-day-old baby was killed by their family dog. Mounties say the attack happened Sunday morning at a home in Entwistle, west of Edmonton. The boy was rushed to hospital by air ambulance, but died.
Every time we've had to go to a situation where this is the case, it's quite difficult for everybody involved beyond just the parents and the family.
And police say the owner has surrendered the dog to authorities. Now, the breed of the dog has not yet been confirmed, but it is being described as medium size. It will be examined by a veterinarian. An application for euthanization could be submitted depending on the outcome of the report. Well, a joint investigation is underway at Toronto's Pearson International Airport. Canadian and U.S. officials are trying to determine what caused yesterday's Delta flight from Minneapolis to crash. With the latest, here's Heather Wright.
Harrowing video shows the moment Delta Flight 4819 touches down at Toronto's Pearson Airport, providing new clues into the Monday crash.
The airplane seems to be descending very rapidly. The airplane spikes slightly to the right, and then the right landing gear touches down, and I think that's where the right wing broke off.
As the plane skids along the runway, there's a burst of flames with black smoke billowing from the aircraft, which then flips onto its back and comes to a stop. All 76 passengers and 4 crew members aboard the plane managed to escape.
The crew of Delta Flight 4819 heroically led passengers to safety, evacuating a jet that had overturned on the runway on landing that was amidst smoke and fire.
A total of 21 people were taken to hospital, their injuries ranging from mild to critical. 19 have since been released. The plane was attempting to land during high winds and drifting snow, though it's not clear what role the weather played in the crash.
Whether they're mechanical with the airplane, whether it's wind, whether it's icing conditions on a runway, no idea at this point in time, so we'll let the TSB do their work. 20
investigators from the Transportation Safety Board of Canada are now at Pearson, along with a team from the US FAA.
They're going to be mapping out the crash scene and getting all the pieces and parts. They'll be removing the 2 black boxes from the tail of the aircraft and be sent to be read.
As part of the investigation, what's left of the airplane will remain on the runway for the next 48 hours. Once it's removed, the runway will be inspected before it reopens for takeoffs and landings.
Heather Wright, CTV News, Mississauga, Ontario.
And there were 76 passengers and 4 crew on board that Delta plane when it crashed. Miraculously, no one was killed, but 21 people were taken to hospital, several in critical condition. John Venevali-Rao spoke to some of those passengers.
Everything, drop it. In those frantic moments after that Delta flight flipped over on a runway, Peter Kukoff grabbed his phone and started filming. As he put it, they were initially hanging upside down like bats, dangling by their seatbelts.
They announced not to get out of their seats, so people were hanging there for, I can't remember how long, but just about a minute, and then they were like, okay, like, get down.
Kukoff says he didn't notice anything wrong on the flight until the moment they hit the ground. Oh.
And then all of a sudden, I just remember being fully sideways, and I was looking down and just seeing like sparks and flames and whatever was grinding against the ground. And then, yeah, it happened pretty dang quick.
Passenger Ashley Zook also filmed herself overturned, later expressing disbelief at what happened.
I was just in a plane crash. Oh my God.
We're in Toronto. Well, the passenger who got these shots, now seen around the world, today reflecting on that moment of impact.
It was just incredibly fast. There was a giant firewall down the side. I could actually feel the heat through the glass. And then we were going sideways. I'm not even sure how many times we tumbled, but we ended upside down. I was hanging there in my seatbelt upside down.
Passengers helping each other get down.
We released the seatbelts that kind of fell to the floor, which is now the ceiling, and helped the lady next to me get out of her seatbelt.
Some of the passengers not from here have begun to make their way home. One injured man we spoke with who was released from hospital, his company sent a private jet to take him back to Minneapolis.
Canada's inflation rate ticked back up to 1.9% in January, thanks to a spike in gas prices. New numbers from Stats Canada show the Consumer Price Index showed relief in prices from the federal tax break, but that was offset by a spike in gas prices to start the year. Prices at the pump rose by 8.6%, while the tax break resulted in a dip of 5.1%. The federal tax break, however, came to an end over the weekend. Canadian home sales jumped nearly 3% in January compared to last year. However, the boost appears short-lived as sales fell off at the end of the last month. The Canadian Real Estate Association says the drop-off is likely reflecting uncertainty over the looming threat of a trade war with the United States. January sales were down 3.3% compared to December, but the number of newly listed properties rose by 11% month over month. Excluding the pandemic, it's the largest monthly increase of new properties since the late 1980s. The countdown continues for a federal election this year, and now one of the main political parties is doing a bit of a rebrand. The Green Party unveiling its new look today. Party co-leaders Elizabeth May and Jonathan Pedno unveiled the new logo. The party adopting a green circle as its new crest. The Green Party also announced it will have a full slate of candidates for the next election. May says the Greens are still vetting potential candidates right now, but they do expect to run someone in every federal riding. Overseas, the first high-level talks aimed at ending the war in Ukraine have wrapped up, and Russian and U.S. officials describing the 4.5-hour meeting as successful. The Americans say any agreement needs to lead to a permanent end of the war. The talks took place between top U.S. and Russian officials in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. However, there were no representatives from Ukraine in the room. Russian officials say the two sides discussed the terms of a meeting between Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump. No date's been set for that meeting, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country will not accept any arrangements that are made without their input. The Vatican is canceling all weekend events, adding to growing concerns over the Pope's health. Pope Francis will remain at a hospital in Rome where he continues to receive treatment for a respiratory infection. The 88-year-old was admitted Friday after struggling to read at a public event due to breathing difficulties. Officials say his condition is stable, but they're describing his infection as complex. All right, please do stay tuned. I'll be right back with a look at weather, but as we head to break, here's a look at today's closing market numbers.